speakers, Deputy Shane Ross and Deputy Finney McGrath. And I assume you're sharing 15-15. Yeah, Deputy Ross first.
Thank you, yes, Councillor. I'm in two kind of minds about this bill because there is obviously an intention on one part to put the position of the clerk up to open competition, which is laudable, but I think that the essence of the bill is a missed opportunity and more of the same, and the failure to modernise. I'd like, first of all, though, to preface my remarks by joining with those of the previous speakers and saying that anything that I say about the appointment to people in the civil service, and particularly the clerk's position, whether past or present or future, in no way reflects on any individuals. Indeed, if I may, I'll take the opportunity, as the last two speakers have, to, because I didn't get an opportunity when he was leaving, to pay tribute to the last clerk of the Dáil, Kieran Coughlin, for the extraordinary work that he did. I knew him better during his period as clerk of the Seanad, when he was an extraordinarily able and a very, very helpful, member-friendly but firm guide to people when they needed help. And indeed, he was, I remember when I was kicked out of the Seanad on one occasion, looking to him for sympathy, and I got none, which was perfectly justifiable in the circumstances because I had been out of order. But he was someone who I realised at the time was utterly fair, and he certainly, in my time here, and I'm 35 years here, he certainly was the finest civil servant I've come across in terms of knowledge, experience, and impartiality. And he obviously served Minister Taoiseach and member well, which is an extraordinary combination. And the unanimous support for that, I think, is a tribute to him here today. My problem with the bill, I suppose, is that this was the opportunity which we expected for there to be some sort of modernisation of appointments in the civil service, but in particular in this House. And in the time I've been here, I've always been, and maybe it's because we don't have time to investigate it, completely boggle-eyed at how appointments are made. I don't know still how the appointments of, what should we say, I don't know, the superintendent are made in this House, how the appointments in middle grades in the library, how the ushers are appointed or anything like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I just don't know. There's no process. People aren't told. They just happen. They appear and go. And okay, that may be the case at the moment. Let's get into this bill. But it's something which should obviously be far more transparent and far more knowledgeable, because when it's shrouded by this sort of mystery, one wonders how the appointments are made. And I think this particular bill is certainly underwhelming in that it does not fulfil the promises that were made to basically make the appointments in this House more transparent, more radical and more modern. The very odd delay that's taken place, which is, I think, a 2-year delay now, in making these appointments, this particular bill, bringing it forward, makes one wonder whether there was some strange, behind-the-scenes political tussle going on about who made the appointment of the clerk. This should have happened automatically and immediately. And certainly the appointment of the clerk and the fact that there was a vacancy for so long is a reflection of the kind of paralysis which seizes politicians, the tensions which arise when you have an appointment of such a key appointment to be made. And whereas there's obviously an aspiration, an intention, and an achievement in the appointment of the clerk here, the other appointments which are dealt in within this bill leave a lot to be desired and do not, in fact, address the difficulty of having a two-tier system. So there is no radical reform of this bill, and presumably the radical reform of the way appointments are made in this House has now been lost and been buried. And the Minister, having promised so much on the record in May 2013 in the Dáil, and even more expansively in correspondence to the House of the Oireachtas Commission, has failed in this bill to deliver his commitment to, and open quotes, ensure the modernisation of the senior management structures of the Houses of the Oireachtas Service. Instead, what we have is sticking plaster to an outmoded structure of clerks and clerk assistant appointments under the staff of the Houses of the Oireachtas Act 1959, with which you'd be familiar. As he promised in May 2013, the Minister should have repealed the 1959 Act and taken the opportunity to put in place a more flexible, modern, integrated management structure to ensure the Oireachtas Service can meet the challenges of supporting Parliament in the 21st century. The Minister would claim that this bill, and has claimed, I think, in this speech, strengthens the independence of Parliament as the Taoiseach, in effect the government, is removed from the appointment process. While any proposal that furthers the independence of Parliament would be welcome, especially as it would be so rare, the Minister knows full well this will not be achieved in his bill, no matter what kind of spin is put on it. For the first time ever, the chairman of each House will have a dual key role in both nominating and appointing candidates to the clerk and clerk assistant positions in either House. The Minister well knows that allowing the House Commission to formally do the appointment is not as transparent or accountable as he would like us to believe, in that the Cearcóla is the chair and Cathaoirleach is the deputy chair of that body. In effect, the appointment process will amount to no more than a rubber stamping of the appointment of the Cearcóla or Cathaoirleach's nominee. Surely this is unheard of in terms of public service recruitment. Why should the Oireachtas Service be unique in the public service, where a senior public appointment can be made by a politician without any competition, as it will be under this bill in the case of the clerk assistant of the Dáil and clerk assistant of the Seanad positions? What does that say to us about how the Minister would like to see how this place is administered? What I'm saying here is the fact that the clerk's position is embedded with an open competition in this bill is clouding the fact that those other positions are remaining being appointed in a totally and utterly unacceptable way. The Minister's bill creates twin-track promotion, one by the standard service public service competition, in the other on the nod from the chairman of either House without any requirement to have a competition on merit. How is such a twin-track system going to motivate hard-working officials, both here in the Oireachtas Service and those talented people outside that you want to attract to come to work in Leinster House, when these senior jobs could be open to old-style political favouritism of an office holder? By retaining the officer of the House appointments under the 1959 Act means that an integrated management system, which is, as you would expect, a standard best practice in any modern public service organisation, is near to impossible. What is the point in having a CEO if half the senior staff are not open to being moved by him or her to another position on a need and skills basis? Effectively, the bill has turned the public service management system on its head, rather uniquely for the Oireachtas Service, but not elsewhere where he espouses modernisation, flexibility and mobility. The Minister compounds this lack of flexibility and mobility by retaining the mandatory link between the more senior position, the Clerk of the Dáil, and that of the CEO, Secretary-General functions. In doing so, the bill has binned the flexibility approach as recommended by the Interparliamentary Group, consisting of officials from his department and the Oireachtas Service, which proposed the most senior position be recruited on the basis of a CEO skill set. Competencies and the Cearcóla of the day could assign Clerk of the Dáil functions to that of CEO or not, as the case may be, allowing for flexibility without requiring further primary legislation to change the management structure. In summary, Minister, the lack of transparency and accountability in having the same office holder involved in both the nomination and appointment of candidates, the twin-track promotion retaining 1959 positions, not breaking the mandatory link between the clerk and the CEO, and the inherent lack of flexibility and mobility at the most senior level all make the Oireachtas service more beholden to politicians than it ever should be. Leinster House is the one place, above all others, where there should be clear water and distance between the Oireachtas administration and the political world of the members. Neither is too well served if the lines of demarcation are blurred. An unhealthy culture can result, leading to lack of professionalism and not optimum levels of performance. The Minister's bill means the Oireachtas service is seriously out of kilter with other public service bodies, where there is that independence and proper accountability for administrative matters which is enshrined in the Public Service Management Act of 1997, which is some considerable time ago and is reflected in houses of the Oireachtas Commission Act, but will be rendered almost toothless under this bill. It is most regrettable that the opportunity has been lost in this bill to put in place a modern, progressive organisation and build on the modernisation programmes under the auspices of earlier House Commissions, which the appointment of the top post as CEO was seen as the culmination. This bill, if implemented in its current narrow form, will be a lost opportunity and a sad reflection on the Minister's claim to be a reforming minister, which I'm sure he made genuinely at the time. But I know there have been political difficulties here, which have involved a compromise, and a political compromise, which should not be the motivation behind a bill of this sort. This bill won't do it, and the Minister has turned his back on modernisation for the Oireachtas under the fig leaf that he is strengthening the independence of Parliament by removing the Taoiseach from the appointment process and providing for an open recruitment at the top, up to the top level by the TLC method, who were, it should not be forgotten, involved in the appointment of the last clerk in 1990, I think it was. So no great innovation here. The only real change is that persons outside Leinster House can be recruited, and the flawed appointment system under this bill means that that must be very remote, as it is unattractive to do so. There is one benefit, but the system has not been tackled. The old ways are still there. The bill should be amended at committee stage to break the mandatory link between the Clerk of the Dáil and the Secretary-General CEO functions, and to repeal the 1959 Act as originally proposed and accepted by the Minister. However, if the Minister insists on retaining the 1959 structure, as he does, and the politicisation which is consequent on it, with a small p, by the way, of the appointment to these posts, at the very minimum, the nomination of a chairman of either House should be on foot of competition on merit to ensure standard recruitment practices are applied to the senior positions in Leinster House across the board. This bill is selective. This bill only applies in its benefits to really one post and one person. This bill should not have been selected. This bill should have attacked the whole gamut of appointments across the board at Leinster House and used the same principles, worthy principles, which have been used in the headline figure to this bill. Members are entitled to be assured that the Oireachtas Service is a modern, flexible organisation which will be more than capable to respond to challenges we as members face, and that this institution has, in trying to make itself relevant to the Republic in the 21st century. I'd like to just echo the words, I think, of Deputy O'Snoddig as well. I'm not qualified to say whether the Oireachtas Commission is doing a good or a bad work. I don't know enough about its meetings. I've never been to one of its meetings. But I do regret deeply, and I assume I'm not allowed to one of its meetings, but I do regret deeply that the consultation about the running of this House and about the appointment to be made of the clerk does not include the smaller parties or any members of the independent group. If these appointments are to be independent, if they are to be non-political, and let's not pretend that the Commission is non-political. Anywhere where you find a group of politicians is political, and where you find them together is political. There may be no whip, but in effect, political decisions are made there. I think it is a great pity that there is not to be, in these appointments, an input, at least, and consideration given to a large body of the members in order to give it the stamp of independence. It would certainly be worthwhile trying to include those parties who are in political opposition, but all of us wish to see this House run properly and run well, and not be run, certainly in the civil service level, politically. And if the Minister could put an amendment into the bill, which he said he's subject to amendments, and I'm talking about a very modest amendment at this stage, which would include those who have the interests of this House at heart, even if they have political differences with the party in power, in the consultation process for making appointments which are so important to the running of this House. And I would extend that, I think, beyond just the running.
Your time is up now.
Sorry, I'm sure Deputy McGrath will give me another 10 seconds. Five, all right.
You've already taken the 10.
I would extend that beyond the running of the actual House itself. I would say to the entire Houses of the electors that those of us who are members here should be consulted in that, because these appointments should not in any way be political.